The Spanish Inquisition was formally established in the year 1478 by the Catholic monarchs, Queen Isabella I, Nomus Castile, and King Ferdinand II of Aragon. Its primary purpose was to ensure the orthodoxy of their subjects, particularly those who had converted from Judaism and Islam to Christianity. These converts, known as conversos and moriscos, were often suspected of secretly practicing their former religions. The Inquisition was therefore a tool for consolidating power and enforcing religious uniformity in the newly unified Spain. The first Grand Inquisitor, Tomás de Torquemada, was appointed in 1483 and became infamous for his cruelty. Under Torquemada's leadership, the Inquisition's methods became more systematic and severe. The process of the Inquisition typically began with an edict of grace, offering a chance for people to confess their heresies without severe penalty. However, this period of grace was often followed by accusations and arrests based on anonymous denunciations. Accused individuals were arrested and their property seized, leaving their families destitute. The accused were not told the names of their accusers, making it impossible to defend themselves against personal enemies. Interrogations were designed to extract confessions, and torture was often used as a means to this end. Estrapado, where the victim's hands were tied behind their back and they were hoisted into the air, was a common method. Another method was the toca, or water torture, where the victim was forced to ingest large amounts of water. The goal of torture was not to punish, but to obtain a confession, which was seen as a sign of repentance. Once a confession was obtained, the accused was sentenced in a public ceremony known as an auto de fe. These ceremonies were elaborate affairs, designed to intimidate the populace and reinforce the power of the church and the crown. The sanbenito was a yellow garment with a cross, and for those condemned to death, it was adorned with flames and demons. Sentences ranged from fines and public humiliation to imprisonment and, in the most extreme cases, death. Those who refused to confess or were deemed unrepentant were relaxed to the secular authorities to be burned at the stake. The burning at the stake was a public spectacle, meant to serve as a terrifying warning to others. The Alhambra Decree of 1492, which expelled the Jews from Spain, was a direct result of the Inquisition's influence. This event had a devastating impact on Spain's economy and culture, as the Jewish community was a vibrant and integral part of society. The Inquisition also targeted Moriscos, Muslims who had converted to Christianity, with similar suspicion and brutality. In 1526, Islam was officially banned in Spain, and Moriscos were forced to convert or face expulsion. The persecution of Moriscos culminated in their expulsion from Spain between 1609 and 1614. The Inquisition's reach extended beyond religious minorities to include anyone who dared to challenge the established order. This included Protestants, who were seen as a threat to the Catholic Church's authority. The Inquisition was particularly effective at suppressing the Protestant Reformation in Spain. Even prominent figures within the Catholic Church were not immune to the Inquisition's scrutiny. Case of Bartolomé Carranza, the Archbishop of Toledo, who was imprisoned for 17 years, is a famous example. The Inquisition also targeted witchcraft and superstition, although its approach was often more skeptical than in other parts of Europe. The infamous Basque witch trials of the 17th century were a notable exception, with many women being accused and executed. The Inquisition's influence began to wane in the 18th century with the rise of the Enlightenment. The last person to be executed by the Inquisition was Cayetano Ripoll, a schoolmaster, in 1826. The Spanish Inquisition was finally abolished in 1834, after more than 350 years of existence. The legacy of the Spanish Inquisition is a complex and controversial one. It is remembered as a symbol of religious intolerance and persecution, a dark chapter in Spain's history. However, some historians argue that its brutality has been exaggerated by the Black Legend, a form of anti-Spanish propaganda. They point out that the number of executions was lower than in other parts of Europe during the same period. Nevertheless, the Spanish Inquisition had a profound and lasting impact on Spanish society, culture, and identity. The fear and suspicion it engendered created a climate of conformity and stifled intellectual and artistic expression. The expulsion of the Jews and Muslims deprived Spain of some of its most talented and productive citizens. The Inquisition's legacy can still be seen today in the architecture and traditions of many Spanish cities. The story of the Spanish Inquisition serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of religious extremism and the abuse of power. It reminds us of the importance of tolerance, religious freedom, and the protection of human rights. The Inquisition's shadow looms large over Spanish history, a testament to a time of terror and persecution. The Tribunal of the Holy Office of the Inquisition, as it was formerly known, was a court of law, not just a mob of fanatics. The inquisitors were often highly educated men, trained in law and theology. They saw themselves as protectors of the faith, saving souls from eternal damnation. The Inquisition's procedures were codified in a series of instrucciones, or instructions. These instructions outlined the entire process, from the initial accusation to the final sentencing. The use of torture was regulated, with specific methods and time limits. However, these regulations were often ignored or circumvented by overzealous inquisitors. The Inquisition's archives, which were open to scholars in the 20th century, provide a wealth of information about its activities. These records show that the Inquisition was not just a tool of religious persecution, but also a means of social control. It was used to enforce moral codes, settle personal scores, and suppress political dissent. The Inquisition's influence was felt in all aspects of Spanish life, from art and literature to science and education. Many of Spain's greatest artists and writers, such as Goya and Cervantes, had to navigate the treacherous waters of the Inquisition. The Inquisition's legacy is a reminder of the enduring power of ideas, both to inspire and to destroy. The Spanish Inquisition was a complex and multifaceted institution, one that cannot be easily summarized or dismissed. It was a product of its time, a dark reflection of the religious and political turmoil of early modern Europe. But its story also holds timeless lessons about the human capacity for both great cruelty and great courage. The Inquisition's methods of surveillance and control have been compared to modern totalitarian regimes. The fear of being watched and denounced created a society where trust was a rare and precious commodity. Children were encouraged to inform on their own parents, and neighbors turned against neighbors. The Inquisition's power was absolute, and there was no appeal from its judgments. The accused were presumed guilty until proven innocent, a reversal of the principles of modern justice. The Inquisition's legacy is a stark reminder of the dangers of unchecked power and the importance of due process. The story of the Spanish Inquisition is not just a story about Spain, but a story about the human condition. It is a story that continues to resonate today, in a world still grappling with issues of religious intolerance and persecution. The Spanish Inquisition may be a thing of the past, but its lessons are as relevant as ever. The Inquisition's economic impact was significant, as the confiscation of property was a major source of revenue. This wealth was used to fund the Inquisition's activities, as well as to enrich the coffers of the crown. Confiscation of property also had a chilling effect on commerce and investment. The fear of being accused of heresy made people reluctant to take risks or engage in new ventures. The Inquisition's impact on science and innovation was particularly devastating. The case of Galileo Galilei, who was condemned by the Roman Inquisition for his heliocentric views, is a famous example. While the Spanish Inquisition was not as focused on scientific heresy, it still created a climate of fear that stifled intellectual curiosity. The Inquisition's influence extended to the Spanish colonies in the Americas, where it was used to convert and control the indigenous population. The Mexican Inquisition and the Peruvian Inquisition were particularly active, targeting both indigenous people and European settlers. The Inquisition's legacy in Latin America is a complex one, as it played a role in both the oppression and the cultural fusion of the region. The Spanish Inquisition was a powerful and enduring institution, one that left an indelible mark on the world. Its story is a reminder of the dark side of human nature, but also of the enduring power of hope and resistance. Inquisition's use of propaganda was highly effective in shaping public opinion. Sermons, pamphlets, and public spectacles were all used to demonize heretics and justify the Inquisition's actions. The auto da fe was the ultimate form of propaganda, a carefully orchestrated piece of theater designed to have a maximum impact. The Inquisition's control over the printing press was also crucial in suppressing dissenting ideas. The Index of Forbidden Books, which listed books that were banned by the Church, was a powerful tool of censorship. The Inquisition's legacy of censorship and thought control is a chilling one. It is a reminder of the importance of a free press and the open exchange of ideas. The Spanish Inquisition was not a monolithic entity, but a collection of regional tribunals, each with its own character and priorities. The Tribunal of Toledo, for example, was known for its severity, while the Tribunal of Valencia was more lenient. The Inquisition's activities also varied over time, with periods of intense persecution followed by periods of relative calm. The early years of the Inquisition were the most brutal, with thousands of people being executed. In later centuries, the Inquisition's focus shifted from heresy to more minor offenses, such as blasphemy and bigamy. The Spanish Inquisition was a complex and ever-changing institution, one that defies easy categorization. It was a product of its time, but its legacy continues to shape our world today. The resistance to the Inquisition was often covert and courageous. People developed elaborate ways to practice their forbidden faiths in secret. They also used coded language and secret symbols to communicate with each other. The resistance was not always successful, and many people paid the ultimate price for their defiance. But their stories of courage and sacrifice are an important part of the history of the Spanish Inquisition. The Spanish Inquisition is a story of both great evil and great good. It is a story that reminds us of the darkness that can exist in the human heart, but also of the light that can never be extinguished. The Inquisition's impact on the Spanish language can still be seen today. Words related to Judaism and Islam were suppressed, and new words were introduced to reflect the dominance of Catholicism. The Inquisition also played a role in the standardization of the Spanish language. The legacy of the Inquisition is a complex and often contradictory one. It is a story that continues to be debated and reinterpreted by historians and scholars. But one thing is certain: the Spanish Inquisition was a pivotal event in the history of Spain and the world. Its story is a cautionary tale that we would do well to remember. The psychological impact of the Inquisition on the Spanish people was profound. The constant threat of denunciation and arrest created a climate of paranoia and mistrust. This culture of fear had a lasting impact on Spanish society, shaping social interactions and personal relationships for generations to come. The Inquisition's legacy can be seen in the Spanish concept of limpieza de sangre, or purity of blood. This obsession with ancestry and religious orthodoxy created a rigid and hierarchical society. The Spanish Inquisition was a powerful engine of social engineering, one that left a deep and lasting scar on the Spanish psyche. The story of the Spanish Inquisition is a story of power, faith, and fear. It is a story that has been told and retold in countless books, films, and works of art. but it is a story that is still not fully understood. The Spanish Inquisition remains a dark and fascinating chapter in human history. Chapter that we must continue to study and learn from. The abolition of the Inquisition in 1834 was not the end of its influence. Its legacy continued to shape Spanish politics and society throughout the 19th and 20th centuries. The Spanish Civil War of the 1930s, with its religious and ideological fervor, has been seen by some as a continuation of the conflicts that gave rise to the Inquisition. The story of the Spanish Inquisition is a story that is still being written. It is a story that we must all engage with in order to understand our past and shape our future.